Welcome to Dr. B Music Theory. I have a question on lesson 38, which was about advanced secondary functions. This question comes from Zak M, who writes, does the whole secondary deceptive cadence ending on 6 of 6 have the same function as a normal 6 chord in the main key? So let me clarify what that means. So let's just hypothetically say we're in the key of C major. We have an E7 chord followed by an A minor chord. If we were going to analyze this, we would call this 5/7 of 6 going to 6. Let's look at another hypothetical situation. Let's say we have that same E7 chord, but it goes to an F major triad instead. The E7 would still be analyzed as a 5/7 of 6. And you would expect it to go to a 6 chord, but it doesn't. You could simply say, well, F is the 4 chord in the key of C major. And you wouldn't be wrong. That would be correct. But what you wouldn't kind of be evaluating or analyzing is that this motion of the E7 to the F is a deceptive resolution. So instead of calling this an F major triad, you could also call it a 6 chord in the key of the 6. So you have 5/7 to 6. And there's another way you could write that. You could simply say 5/7, 6, and then you put a slash under the whole thing of 6. So what you're analyzing by using this methodology is you're recognizing that this is a deceptive resolution, that it sounds like a deceptive resolution. Whereas if you just analyze it as 5/7 of 6 to 4, you might say, Dr. B, that secondary function doesn't resolve the way it's supposed to. This is wrong. This is a mistake. And my answer would be, no, it's not a mistake. It's actually a deceptive resolution, and we could analyze it in this way, calling this 6 of 6. So that's what Zak is referring to. And the idea, does it have the same function as a normal 6 chord in the key, is it's not the exact same, but it's very similar. And so what we're going to do shortly is look at what makes a deceptive resolution a deceptive resolution. Zak continues to write, the 6 has a tonic-like function, so that would make sense. How far can it go? That's a great question. How far can you take these ideas, these principles? Could any chord be replaced with a secondary deceptive cadence in its key? So, let's get to work on that. Let's start by saying, what really is a deceptive resolution? So, our normal deceptive resolution is a root position 5 chord or 5/7 chord. It is important to remember that it is almost always found in root position. That's important. Then the bass either moves up a major second to a 6 chord with a minor sonority. This is what would happen if we were in a major key. So this is for major keys. Or if we are in a minor key, the root from the 5 chord moves up a minor second to a major sonority 6 chord. So this is what happens in a minor key. This sound, this motion, is what's involved in a deceptive cadence. Voice leading is super critical. When you have these sounds move with this kind of root relationship, with this kind of voice leading, it will sound like a deceptive cadence. You hear a 5, especially if it's 5/7, then there's really no question. So what we're going to do is when we move forward, we're going to talk mainly about 5/7, because for the ear, there's no question that is a dominant sonority, a major minor 7. It's the only way it can occur. Whereas a major triad could be a 1 in a major key, could be a 1 chord, it could be a 4 chord, it could be a 5 chord. So the sonority alone of a major triad doesn't tell you that it's a dominant function, but a major minor 7 sonority does. So we're going to investigate that further. That's how we're going to focus it. So let's take a look here and see what happens. And we'll just take a look at the a major key, and you can apply these principles to a minor key as well. So we'll take C major. And we'll take a look and say, well, if we had let's say a 5, 7 of 4. And again, 5, 7 of 4 is critical that we have the 7th here, because a 5 of 4 would simply be a C major triad, which the human ear will only hear as a 1 chord, not as a 5 of a secondary function 5 of. So by making it a C7, that's what defines it. So that would be a C7 in our key of C major, and we would normally expect that C7 to resolve to an F major triad, a 4 chord. Our 5, 7 of 4 resolves to 4. However, if we want it to resolve deceptively, and we can, because the power of that motion, the human ear will latch onto it, it will make sense. We could go up a major second to a minor sonority. That would work. And it doesn't matter that we're in a major key here, the C major. It matters where we are going to. So if we did that, we went up a major second, it would go to a D minor triad. A D minor triad happens to be a 2 chord in the key of C minor. So up a major second gives us a minor triad. That's perfect. If we tried to go up a minor second to a major chord, that would be a D flat major triad. That wouldn't be diatonic to the key of C major. It could be a Neapolitan. Neapolitans are usually in first inversion. And you will notice that when we're talking about a deceptive resolution, both the 5 chord and the 6 chord are in root position. So we're not really going to go to the D flat. That's going to be that would be even more unusual than what we're already doing. But to have a C7 go to a D minor triad in the key of C, we could analyze that as a 5, 7 of 4 going to 2, or a 5, 7 going to 6 in the key of the 2. That would be a perfect way, and that would be an expansion of what Zak was asking about. Absolutely, you could do this. You could take it even further. What would be another step? Well, let's see. What if we looked at 5, 7 of 5? Because 5, 7 of 5 is very, very common. That would normally be 5, 7 of 5 would normally be a D7. This we could do as a major triad, just a D major triad. We would expect that to go to a G triad. But what if it were to resolve deceptively? Well, root movement of up a major second to a minor triad, does that work for us? If we go D7 up a major second, which would be to an E minor triad, is that in our key of C major? Yes, it is. It's our 3 chord. It's our 3 chord. So we could call it 5, 7 of 5 to 3, or to be more illuminating and enlightening, we could call that 5, 7 of 5 to 6 of 5. And we can put it all under one line, or we can do it separately like this. Either way. I personally like this one the best. It kind of shows that we're staying in that other key for a split second, and how that analysis works. Now, going up a minor second to an E flat major triad would imply that you're going into mode mixture using the E flat from the parallel minor. So there might be even further possibilities you could explore. The main point is that you're looking at what makes a deceptive resolution, and saying, well, what do I have? How would this work? Let's keep going, because we can keep taking it further. We go to 5, 7 of 6. 5, 7 of 6 would normally be an E7. E7, we would expect it to go to an A minor, but instead, okay, so normally we'd expect it to go to A minor, which would be our 6th chord. But can we go up a major second? Well, if we go up a major second, our root is an F sharp. And F sharp is not in the key of C major. So going to an F sharp minor triad, it's not really going to work for us. But what about up a minor second to a major triad? Well, that would mean E up to an F. F is a major triad. In the key of C major, that works perfectly. That's a 4 chord, which is what we kind of talked about a second ago. So we could talk about 5, 7 of 6 going to 6 in the key of the 6. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to lay out what are the actual chords. So using lead sheet symbols, E7 to F major triad. How can we wrap our heads around that so that we can understand what's going on? How can we take that as a principle and apply it and see how we can take it further? Just exactly what Zak M was asking about. Here are all these principles in music theory. And the great composers will look to the masters, find some kind of principle that they seem to be using, and then ask themselves, how can I take it further? Can it be expanded even more? And when it comes to the case of secondary functions and secondary deceptive resolutions or cadences, the answer is yes, we can take it further. So we have all those right there. So all of these work great, the ones I just illustrated. But they don't all work great. It all depends on that root movement and where it's going to end up. So we had 5, 7 of 4, and we knew we could use that as either resolving regularly to 4 or deceptively. 5, 7 of 5 can work resolving regularly or deceptively. 5, 7 of 6 can resolve regularly or deceptively. We never have 5, 7 of 7 diminished. We don't find that. Ask yourself why, review. It's because we don't have secondary functions that are basically dominant functions resolving to diminished triads, which is why you don't have a 5, 7 of 2 diminished in a minor key or 5, 7 of 7 diminished. This resolution of going to 7 diminished will never feel like a tonic. It's not a major or minor triad. It is not resolved enough to feel like a resolution. So in the field of secondary functions, we do not use 5, 7 of 7 diminished. So we're not going to look at that as a way to go further. 5, 7 of 1, we don't label anything like this because 5, 7 of 1 is the assumed. That's 5, what we normally call 5, 7. That is the assumption, just as we have certain assumptions with figured bass. So we never quite call it that, and the deceptive resolution is our normal deceptive resolution. So this, we already have it. We just don't use this kind of terminology for it. So then what about 5, 7 of 2? How would this work? So a 5, 7 of 2, that's something we do find. It's in this key, it would be an A7. Now, what would it take for this chord, 5, 7 of 2, to resolve deceptively? We look here. Well, we could go up a major second to a minor triad, which would be B minor. What's B minor in the key of C major? It isn't. It's not in the key of C major. So, well, we can't really use that. What is diatonic? Well, that would be B diminished. And we just talked about why a diminished triad is not used as the resolution. So we know it can't be B diminished. Well, if we go up a half step to a major triad, we go to B flat major triad. And what's B flat major in the key of C major? It isn't. So, in terms of taking this concept of secondary functions resolving deceptively, although and 5-7 of 2 works great resolving to 2, it doesn't work resolving deceptively because of what a deceptive resolution has to mean. Well, we did 5 of 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2. Let's look at 3. That's the last one left. 5, 7 of 3, which would be a B7. So if we go up a major second, our root would be C sharp or D flat, which is not in our key of C major. So that's really not a great option. If we go up a half step to a major triad, we would go to a C major triad, which happens to be our tonic. So at first blush, that looks like it could be kind of exciting, right? We then go to a 1 chord, and instead of calling it 5-7 of 3 to 1, we can be 5-7 going to 6 in the key of the 3. But we do encounter some other problems because once we've established what those chord relationships are going to be, what the movement of roots is going to be, we also have to figure out how this fits in to a larger harmonic phrase. And a little bit of a review will be very helpful in this instance. A secondary function, any of these 5-7 of 5, it occurs right before its namesake would occur. So if we have a 5-7 of 5, it occurs right before you would have the 5 chord. So the question then becomes well, what comes before a 5 chord? What can come? And it has to work. So we have a lot of options before that. We can be coming from a 1 chord. We can be coming from a 2 chord. 3 is not a very good option. 4 is. Those are 6 is not a great option. 7 diminished is not a great option. But 1, 2, or 4 all would work very well. So we have to consider, how does this affect when we're doing our deceptive resolution? Well, the concept needs to be the same. This secondary function, 5-7 of 3, whether it's going to resolve regularly or deceptively, has to make sense in an overall harmonic progression. So let's see what that would look like. If we have 5-7 of 3, it would normally go to 3. And what comes before a 3? Well, there's usually only one option. It's a 1 chord. 3 doesn't have a lot that comes before it. The progression of 1 to 3 is the most common. So when we look at that, we say, okay, we're going to have a C major triad going to a B7, and then let's say it's going to need to resolve deceptively. Instead of going to 3, we're going to resolve deceptively to a C major triad. That poses a lot of voice leading issues, because to really make it sound deceptive, this needs to be in root position, this needs to be in root position, and normally when we're going 1 to 3, the 1 chord is in root position. That's just not going to work. That's going to have all sorts of problems. So this is also not all that usable. Not because there's a problem with the progression side, but just because of voice leading purposes. Because of voice leading purposes, you encounter a bunch of issues. Now, that said, we did look and see that, 5-7 of 4, 5-7 of 5, 5-7 of 6 are really excellent at resolving either regularly or deceptively. Those 3 in particular slot in super easy. So let's slot them into a progression, and let's use our ears to really be the judge. And in the end, isn't what music theory supposed to do is supposed to be taking what works for the ear and developing explicit principles on what works. So one of the questions that some of my students often ask is, or one of the problems that then results in a question is, how do you tell what sounds good? You play a bunch of chords for someone, if they're not dissonant all by themselves, they might sound okay. They might not sound bad. How do you develop your ear to a point where it is so refined that you can tell the difference between a chord progression that really, really works and one that's just non-offensive? And again, as composers, you have a higher bar than simply being non-offensive. You actually want to create something. And I try to make the analogy of someone who's in the culinary arts, developing a very, very fine palate. I'm no expert. If you ask me, was this apple baked with white sugar or brown sugar? I might have a hard time telling the difference, but a master chef would be able to tell without any problem. What we're trying to do as musicians, as composers, as lovers of music, is develop our ears as acutely, as finely as a master chef, where we can tell exactly how those notes relate to each other, which ones really progress to the next step, which ones are retrogressions, which ones are leapfrogging over a step, how the notes really relate to each other. So let's make some progressions here using those different secondary functions that are so flexible that we can use them to resolve regularly or deceptively. So let's say everything will be in C major for the sake of easy analysis. So we start with a 1 chord. Let's say we go to a 3 chord. We then go to a 6 chord. Then let's say we have a 5, 7 of 4. Normally it's going to resolve to our 4 chord. It will then resolve to our 5 chord, and then finally to a 1 chord. But let's say, as an option, instead of going the path of expectation, we diverge. We go deceptively instead to what could be considered our 2 chord. We could analyze it as our 2 chord, or again, we could put 5, 7 of 4 to 6 of 4. Either one. We're going to write, for this purpose, we're going to just slot it in like this. To continue, we can get right back on track and go 5, 1. So once I diverged here, then I look at this chord and I say, well, what can this go? Can it go to 5 as well? Yeah. 4 can go to 5, 2 can go to 5. Either one. Harmonic progression is what I'm using. So this would be a fantastic progression. So let's take a listen. We go from our 1 chord to 3, 6, 5, 7 of 4, to 4, 5, and then 1. Now let's hear it if we have a deceptive resolution. So we're going to do the 5, 7 of 4 to 2. 1 chord, 3 chord, 6 chord, 5, 7 of 4, our 2 chord, 5, 1. So again, the difference is between our 5, 7 of 4 going to 4 and our 5, 7 of 4 going to 2. So let's look at another option. So here's another progression. We start in our same key of C major. We go 1, 6, 4, 5, 7 of 5, resolving as expected to 5, and then 1. So let's say instead of resolving as expected, this 5, 7 of 5 instead resolves deceptively, which we could call to a 3 chord. Now, there's another way we can analyze it. We could say 5-7 resolving deceptively to 6, all in the key of the 5. The key of 5 being G major. That would mean a D7 resolving to an E minor triad, because 6 would be E minor in the key of G. So after that, we have to say, okay, well, 3, or this whole, we could really look at it two different ways. We could say, okay, we have a 3 chord here. Where would a 3 chord normally go? A 3 could go to 4, 5, 1. So we could continue with our good harmonic progression. And that's what probably makes the most sense, because when you resolve deceptively, you then kind of use that 6th chord as a restarting spot. Some experimentation could be done to say, well, this is all a 5 function, can I just go back to 1? It's not going to work as smoothly. So I think it's best to follow this, in this case, analyzing it as the 3 chord so that you know that you need to continue along that path. Lead sheet symbols: C major triad, A minor triad, F major triad, D7, E minor, F major, G major, C major. Let's take a quick listen to what that one would sound like. First, our regular progression, or rather the top line here where we actually resolve to the G and then the C chord. So we have that was our top part. Now let's hear what it sounds like as our deceptive version. So there again, you'll notice that what I'm trying to do is systematically go through the options, keeping in mind good harmonic progression and the type of deceptive resolutions and how they work. So we have one more to go through that's going to be super effective and work in just about any composition. So that is the 5-7 of 6. So 5-7 of 6. So let's start with our 1 chord. Let's go to a 3 chord. We then say, well, we're going to go to a 6 as a great progression, but let's insert the 5-7 of 6. And if we do this as expected, it goes to a 6 chord. After you go to a 6 chord, let's say 2, 5, 1. Very simple, very common progression. Now, that would be our first track. Instead of resolving this secondary function regularly, we resolve it deceptively, which means that the 5-7 of 6 would go to 4 in our key of C major. Once we get to 4, we can go straight back on the same path of harmonic progression, 2, 5, 1. So we can branch. Let me label what those lead sheet symbols would be. C major triad, E minor triad. 5-7 of 6 means that we're dealing with an E7, A minor here, D minor, G major, C major. The E7 resolving deceptively goes to an F major triad. Then we go back again on the D minor triad, G major triad, C major triad. So again, how can we take this concept of resolving deceptively, whether it's within our key, whether we're using secondary functions that also can resolve deceptively, but resolve deceptively right back into our home key. We're not even going to talk about what if they resolve deceptively into something that's not in the home key. Well, I guess we already did. We did talk about, well, what if it resolves deceptively into a Neapolitan chord or a mode mixture chord from like the parallel minor. So there's almost always another step you can take to see if it works. But as you're deciding whether it works, try to use your ear. Develop a very good ear so that can finally hear whether something's really working or not, and see where that leads you. So let's take a listen to this last example before we wrap it up. So here's our final example. We have a 1 chord to 3, 5, 7 of 6 to 6, 2, 5, 1. Now let's hear how that compares to when we resolve deceptively. So 1, 3, 5, 7 of 6, 4, 2, 5, 1. So there you have it. Hope you enjoyed another episode of Dr. B Music Theory.